This letter Ion actually coincides with the constellation, the Pleiades. Now, if you're familiar with Taurus the bull, you see the green circle there? The Pleiades are the 7 stars in the bull's neck here. And you can see it up there, the Pleiades around that square here. But the name Pleiades comes from the Greek word plain, which means to sail. Some refer to the Pleiades, it's called a Pleiades cluster, as the 7 sailing ones. Has anybody ever heard that? The 7 sailing ones. As does their name imply. Anciently, these 7 represented the 7 that had accompanied Noah in the ark and were thereby saved along with him. That's significant because Noah was rescued before the wrath came upon, right? Before the wrath came upon the earth. He was the one who was rescued, and then the rest of the people suffered the wrath of God. And that's very similar to what's happening here at the end. That's why I showed you these people. They are taken up before the wrath of God is poured out. So those tribulation saints and those who are saved during the tribulation, even they are removed before these bowls of wrath or vials of wrath are poured out upon the earth. These 7 were, of course, the 7 that were in the ark were his wife and his children, right? There was 8 people, according to the Bible, that were saved in the ark. Well, there's those 7 stars. Those 7 stars are said, were called the 7 sailing ones, and they were said to represent the 7 that were saved additionally with Noah during that time. Of course, that was many years ago. None of us were living at that time. Within the book of Revelation, the 7 stars represent the 7 angels or 7 messengers of the 7 churches, and they appear to correspond to the 7 stars that make up the Pleiades cluster. What we're saying there is also when we talk about in Revelation chapter 1, 2, and 3, there were 7 stars that represented the 7 churches, and in total, they represented the church as a whole. Where's the church? The church was raptured into heaven, right? Well, just like the 7 stars actually represented the ones who are carried off into heaven and escape. So they represent Noah in Noah's time. They represent the church in our time. Some have taught that the most probable location of the throne of God, and for that matter the very center of heaven itself, is to be found directly within the center of the Pleiades cluster. I'm not saying the Bible says that. I'm saying that many say that this is where the center and this is where God's throne actually exists today. What's kind of interesting about it is that when Jesus appeared to John, he was surrounded by 7 lamps, remember? So that would fit the Pleiades cluster right there. Also, here's another picture of it. You see the bull with the 7 stars up there, Pleiades cluster. According to the Greek myth of Europa, Zeus snatched the virgin bride, who is Europa, from out of the earth exclusively to produce a child. The virgin bride appears to us in the myth as a virgin riding upon the back of Taurus the bull. When we've said this before, we're rephrasing it here, but anciently these 7 represented the 7 that accompanied Noah in the ark and were thereby saved by being removed and protected immediately before the judgment fell upon the earth, and all who remained upon the earth were destroyed. So we see in the sign then an ancient prophecy regarding God himself as carrying forth his bride upon his back and transporting her over to the other side. What's interesting about this myth of Europa, if anybody can remember it or they're familiar with it or not, Europa, the reason she was on the back of the bull in the first place was she was escaping the wrath of Hera, the goddess who was going to cast her wrath down upon Europa. Zeus protects her and delivers her by carrying her off. She holds on. He takes the form of a bull. She holds on to him, and he carries her off and saves her. And then he impregnates her, and she gives birth to a child. But the child is divine, right? Because he's a child of Zeus. Well, obviously that's mythology, and that's not Bible, but it does represent Jesus coming forth, because Jesus is, remember, Jesus is the born of the virgin who conceives and gives the son, and the son, he's the Son of God who comes as the mighty deliverer. And so you can see that typology. I hope you can see that. Now, we've been talking about the Pleiades, the cluster. We're not really talking about the bull, but the Pleiades cluster itself. The Hebrew sign of the letter actually corresponds here. The 16th letter actually corresponds to the Pleiades cluster.